before I get into my sermon, hopefully I'll get into it. Does anybody else have some, and I'm going to tell you right from the get, I know what I used to think that having a whole lot of work and programs would help. And at one point I began to consider the book of Acts more heavily and realized they didn't have a whole lot of programs. They got together and worshiped and shared the word. If somebody was in need, they shared their sustenance. They prayed for each other. And they worshiped God. I said that worship, prayer, word, care for one another, love one another. And there was a day that I said, we need to just have simple church, like the book of Acts. That's what I was referring to. Simple church is a lot harder than a lot of programs, because you can get lost in a program. I'm not saying we don't have breakaway groups or anything like that. I'm saying, but when you have a lot of quote-unquote programs going on, like yearly youth trips to Haiti, say, and when you have a lot of that, it's like you can mistake the busyness for fruitfulness and it's been my experience a lot of times with youth groups when there's churches that if they do have a mission trip, say to Haiti, they go down there and build cinder block buildings and then at night have a fun time and come back just having had a good time together in Haiti and not necessarily learning anything more about being missionaries in Haiti or anywhere else for that matter. That's been what I've seen over the years, over and over. There was a program for a while that a lot of our young people went to, and it was a very mainline denominational flavor, and it felt as if I'm walking on thin ice probably, but it felt like it was pulling away as much of any good that it was doing. And the whole thing, we went one night while it was their turn to speak and do their thing, testify. And then afterwards we got in a room and they gave them a critique. You know how I do critiques, I'll tell you the good, bad, and ugly. You know, I want you to do the same with me. Truthfully, not try to make up something, but truthfully. And you all, some of you all, especially leaders, have felt free to do that. Okay, fine. But in this particular setting, it was all good. And I could have, being that person's pastor, I can make some columns. They did a good job, but I could make some columns to be helpful about coming up. But it felt like that was against the rules there, to say anything critical, thought-provoking, anything that could cause somebody to in any way feel less than wonderful. You know, and that's not reality. Because all of us have, I said it to Robert, all of us have columns. This is wonderful. I can go to my buddy Karen over there. I could give you a huge list of outstanding qualities. And she could do that with me, but she could also look at me and say, you still haven't gotten over that? That's all of us. That's all of us. There's not a person in here that has quote unquote arrived. Nobody. And if you try to do like, did you ever read From Sea to Shining Sea? Joy Dawson's son wrote the book. There's 2 volumes and they're long books. But one thing that really stuck out to me is this one governor years ago, maybe well over 100 years ago. He was a governor and a pastor. And in his church, he kept lopping people off that he allowed to take communion. And it got down to the place where he only could have communion with his wife, only trust that she was worthy. And it didn't take long for him to realize he wasn't worthy either. I'm sure it took a matter of time, but yeah, if we dug into one another's life, we could all point fingers and say, you're the one falling short, you're the one sitting on the wheel, you're the one. We're all supposed to examine each other, but at the same time, you can have 2 lists. I don't mean you're welcome to have 2 lists, the positive and negative, but the fact is, you do have them, And God still loves us and uses us regardless. Yes, ma'am. You wait for the mic. On your way back from your mic run, could you hand me my coffee? Okay.
Oh, sorry. When you're talking about having a list and having a positive and negative, I was reminded last Wednesday of Hannah's teaching about washing one another's feet and showing love. And immediately, and once again, I want to reiterate, is like, it's the love of God, that causes, we have to have that kind of eyes to see one another in the loving way of like, yes, I see the positive, I see the potential, I see the growth, that's the word I wanted. But I also see this needs, and so we have a desire to encourage, build up, bring forth, and so
right.
in that sense, yes, we have to look at every one of our brothers and sisters in an honest and, let's be real.
Let's be real. Let's speak
manner,
the truth in love.
But also desire for the Christ in them to come forth and expect that and want that, just have that passion for it in one another.
There's a verse, perfect love casts out fear. There was a book in the 70s called, thank you, Why Am I Afraid to Tell You Who I Am? Anybody remember that book? No? Okay. Well, as a social worker, many of us bought and shared. It was real popular at the time. And the bottom. Well, the overall answer, there were a lot of things that explained how we act because we're afraid. I'll tell you what, some of y'all are young enough that you don't really know who you are yet. I remember when I was seeing the campus psychologist at Calvin College, some of you know this, my frequent question to him was, how do I be? How do I be? How do I be? That was how do you be? I didn't know the answer to that basic question. How do you be? I am being, I'm not sure I'm on the rails or off the rails, on the right track. And I used to ask him that. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my favorite house style was, like get an apartment and figure out how do I want to arrange the living room. I had no clue. I didn't know what was my best expression of clothing. I was experimenting with all kinds of, I didn't know who I was. And it takes time to figure that out. How do I be? So sometimes we're afraid to tell somebody who we are because we honestly don't have a clue. Who am I? And who am I in the body of Christ? And how valuable is my input and my presence? What can I be to the body of Christ that encourages, edifies, and exhorts? How can I speak the truth in love if I don't even know when somebody tells me what they're going through, what truth would be helpful? How can if I don't know verses? I remember I asked the pastor, and I'm going to get to something that just popped up right now in my heart, but I'd asked the pastor, there was a book they had that if you went completely blank, you look up quarreling with family. And then you go to the page where they talk about, and there's a list of verses that you can use to help people. Okay, sometime you go blank and that's what happens. But I think after we've been in the Word, having devotions for the amount of time we should, this decade, then the next decade, then the next decade, there comes a time that while we're reading the Word, we store some things that help us, and then when somebody else is going through the whole thing, you can say, this verse encouraged me. Now you're not going to be able, and I'm not going to be able to do that unless I in fact have spent time with the Lord. When we started this church, we had a rule. If you want to be a member of this church, you have to spend 7 hours a week in devotions. Anybody remember that rule? And then we had an extra meeting every week called Prayer and Saints meeting. every single week. And if you were a member, we expected you there. And my constant mantra, that's probably a bad word, at that time was, if we bring up a topic and you don't dare discuss it here, don't you dare to go to the restaurant and say, well, they were talking about that, I was thinking about, I wanted to say, I'm like, what? Because people lack the courage to speak up. Well, what if I'm wrong? Well, then don't tell it to your friend at the restaurant if you're wrong. Now you polluted their brain. I remember that, and I was going to say, one way for us to get back on whatever track, maybe God's doing a special work, that's very possible. God prunes sometime. He does. Yes?
My brother was a manager at Sears in the Overgiven department. They had supervisors that would come in every once in a while from Sears and give lectures and all. And he said, one thing my brother remembered, he said, if you're having a meeting and you have a person that's not willing to bring up whatever they're dealing with in the meeting, and if you want to know who's causing the trouble, he said, those very ones that are troublemakers will talk outside the meeting, but they won't talk in the meeting, won't express themselves in the meeting. And that's whatever, pride, fear, and whatever, and that won't satisfy the Lord. Nothing that the Lord dealt with a bunch of people because of fear. He dealt with people because of pride. The children of Israel could not enter in because of pride and
fear
whatever.
of the giants.
Fear, wanted to go back to leeks and onions and
Egypt, and
what's the other, garlics? Please. Now, you know why? Because they were into a bondage of tradition rather than saying the Lord's. They knew too that they were supposed to go to a promised land, but they got caught up in the wilderness. What was it, 40 years? And so what we have to do is learn to be honest, learn to love one another. And I have faults, you have faults. Let's be willing to say, I'm willing to put myself on the table and come forth. You do the same thing, and we can work things out. We get to know one another.
Before I get into what I have before me, if I ever get there, does anybody deep down think, yeah, we're just being pruned, or think, well, I'll tell you what the problem is? Anybody? Or what? One aspect, not the whole, whatever. Does anybody have anything you're thinking, I wish they knew, da-da? By the way, if you listen to a lying, slandering tongue, I just read a quote that says something to the effect of, you're giving power to that tongue. So be careful who you listen to, too. Because sometimes people can have negative opinions about church, period. Just church, period. Or a black person, Leslie's had to go through, what do you want to go to that white church for? She's been through that. She has shared that with me before. You know, so that's a whole other issue. Not most of us don't have to deal with. Why? You know how white people are. Why are you going to the white church? Well, she's tasted and seen that we're tolerable. Yeah.
It can be both. It could be pruning, and things have changed. When we started this church, we had a bunch of young people. That's a whole different congregation. They don't have very much responsibility. They were, first of all, they were hungry. We had a group come in that were hungry for more of the Lord from all places, the Catholic Church. And then I remember the time that we didn't have a bus ministry, but we had a ministry where several people were picking up people. And all of a sudden that faded away, and we said, and we found out things have changed. We had families that they had to take care of their own home.
They needed car seats in their car. The rules changed.
Prepare their own kids to be here and whatever. And we just didn't have it.
Yeah.
couldn't do it any longer. Will that ever happen again? I don't know. But the point is, things change too.
Yeah.
And
I
we
think-
have to learn to adjust to changes.
I think the Saints meeting we used to have every week for quite a few years were necessary when you're building a church to make a foundation and learn each other. I'm sure we could use one now and again now, but not to the level when you're dealing with a bunch of 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds that we're all in this together. But just be praying and ask the Lord if He's pruning, and anybody else is going to decide they're going to move to Tupelo, Mississippi or something, that, that happens, and then, and to help us be encouraged no matter what, like Haggai, no matter what, that we encourage ourselves in the Lord no matter what. Nobody has any, Robert does.
You and I'm not going to mention the church, but we know a church that one time lost 2,000 people in a
And
given
had
thing.
2,000
And
left.
I told that leader at that before that happened. I said they at that time had gained several people, and I said I feel that as much as you gain, you've lost. And sure enough, that happened within about a year after making that statement to that particular church, and over 2,000 people at one time.
Yeah, and that pastor, by the way, he's one of my favorite role models. But he went on to, one of his ministries is to counsel other pastors now. I think he's around my age, I'm pretty sure. But all of us are finding the path as we go. We basically pioneered a whole different kind of church than what we were raised in. And my son right now is, he's got January, he's got the program, he's got the data base, but this last time we were together, I could tell he was second guessing himself about this thing and wants to do it this way instead. And he's pioneering a new program fashioned to fit River of Life specifically. And computer programming is just a constant thing of, okay, where did I go wrong in this string? Where did I go wrong here? What one letter, one number, what symbol is off that's causing this not to work? And it is tedious, time-consuming work. And he's admitting he's learning while he's doing it and appreciates the opportunity to do something new. But when you have a church or you have a group, sometimes that's just the way it is. You're like trial and when you have your first kid, you're talking trial and error. You can read 10 books from Christians, how to be the best mom and dad possible, and they don't have it all. Dr. Spock sure didn't have it all. Yeah, he did. He had a bunch of spoiled brats come up underneath his don't this, don't that. It's pretty contrary to the Word of God. But I'm saying as we do church, I don't know how many of you, I have no idea what your thoughts are. You're not talking to me right now. I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just saying you probably had all the same questions as I'm going through right now. And we're all in this together. And I appreciate every single last person that is here or is faithful to, every last person. I want to kill probably an elephant in the room. Robert and I are doing just fine in terms of keeping up what we've always been doing in terms of word, worship, maintenance, everything. We're doing just fine. So if you're imagining that those two are going to drop dead well, you might too. But I'm not thinking our particular situation is going to cause that at this point. Now, for all I know, we've got from 3 to 5 years. I don't know. There might be more. But Jesus did a lot in 3.5 years. So we don't ever look at that like, well, we better start looking, because we don't know. You don't know. So you go full force no matter what excuse that anybody can come up with to say, well, I don't know how much I want to, I'm thinking about taking some of the young people to thus and so meeting at who knows where, First Assembly or who knows where. But I don't know. There'd only be 3 kids and I don't know, or 3 young people. Do whatever your hand finds to do and whatever you're inspired to do with all your might. With all your might, no matter what. Right now, the amount of people in this room, sometimes that was our weekly amount in the house, right this second. And there was times you sit there and look and go, is this thing ever getting off the ground? And people were, once we got rid of the first, we didn't get rid of the first batch. Once the first batch left, things began to grow and a foundation was laid. We didn't do anything different than we did with the first batch. We really didn't. If you ever start a church, Cliff, whenever, if ever, sometimes a good sign of you're right on track is God will allow a bunch of people to come in that think they're on the ground floor of some great business endeavor, and everybody will decide the best way for you to run it. I'm serious. Yeah. And it's a test. It is a test. But we still get input, and I appreciate it, but it's not the same atmosphere it was with that first batch. That were constantly, not the whole group, but many of them were constantly critical. Constantly. It ought to be this way, it ought to be this way, that kind of thing. But when the second batch came in, things began to take off. So, please, I'm going to say what I said at the Saints meeting. If you have any idea, if God's been talking to you in your devotions, here's the issue, here's what we have to do. I know one thing we have to do, everybody. We have to tighten up on ignoring some have to do this right now and getting alone with the Lord, seeking His face in relationship. Now that is something God showed me. For me. And I'm assuming most everybody in here could use the same word from God that He's been given to me. Because the cares, and maybe that's what's choking, the cares and concerns of this world choke. And I have more wannabe hobbies. I still have a drawer full of broken jewelry in the basement that I have this dream of making into wind chimes that will sparkle in the sun. Shut up, Cliff. They've been sitting there for over 20 years. Do I want to throw it away? Because maybe one day I'll actually do it. And as we laugh about it, there is a part of me that still wants to do that. Huh? When I'm 90, yeah. Oh, I love those sparkles on those fake jewelry pieces. But I'm just saying, that's a want to do. I have this whole list of, I have to take care of this. I have to get every last 2025 receipt out of my office. If you haven't noticed, for the last year and a half, I've been on kind of a bumpy road. And guess what? Since the ablation, I'm just starting to get some energy left to go beyond what I absolutely have to do. That feels good. I begin to be, maybe I will make that winch, I know. But I'm just saying, that might be, I might have answered the question I tossed out there. Right there. Right there. Set aside. Now, Robert and I still do 5 days a week, our devotions together. But that's great. I don't want to slack off. But there's nothing that compares with alone time with the Lord. Nothing. And you know that I come to the garden alone. The joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. Yesterday while I had been preparing for hours yesterday, and I'd already written it, and for hours tweaking and thinking and praying. Hopefully you'll find out in the second service a few old school songs that I was singing while I was meditating on salvation. Here's another thing that I believe the Lord spoke to my heart, to exhort myself and you. Think more about what He's done for you on Calvary. It's so basic, it sounds religious to say it. But as I sung some songs about it, and remember, like, He looked beyond my faults and saw my needs. It was grace that caught my falling soul. My soul was falling rapidly back in the late 60s, early first year or so of 70. To remember, because we start to learn things that are fascinating in the Word, and they're legitimate, there's no problem. But if we, like Paul said, I preach Christ and Him crucified. Jesus said, as often as you do this, remember my death. And we say those words, but He's like, you ever try to train a dog? I never did, but I watch people do it. They put newspapers first all over the house so they'll find the right place, But when that dog still finds some corner that's not covered and does his thing, I've seen my girlfriend at social services. She took that little Cocker Spaniel, unentreatable, unteachable, beautiful puppy, and took him and put his nose right into what he had done and redirected him to the newspapers. And I think that's what God does to us sometimes. Look at the mess, Rosemary, you're making by being too concerned, getting too caught up in what has to be done. Yeah, a lot of things are important. I already got my federal penitentiary ministry all laid out in case he never does get those taxes done. That's a joke. Because I've always been faithful every single last year since I started working. And now we've had an extension now till October. Anyway, God sometimes the things, like while I'm sitting here asking you, I get revelation on, get the basics right. Get the basics right. Cut it out. Or you're gonna drift further and further away from passion, simplicity of the gospel. Anybody resonate with that? Lord, help us. And you know what we want to say? Because the doctor, finally I got a doctor, E.G. was so happy, in so many words without being rude, telling me I'm fat. And I told him, I know I'm fat. I said, my son has been grieved by doctors. He said, I get so mad that nobody addresses the elephant in the room and he said, yeah, of course. Of course. But this doctor, and when he was saying, your weight is an issue and and then he told me I had to exercise. Robert's watched me since. I don't know what break I'd exercise in. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to get this, financing together. At any rate, I told him, thank you. I know I'm fat, and you are the first doctor in my life to call out what is probably the biggest reason for some of my issues. I did. I told him, thank you. Not that I'm going to be a role model here. I'm trying, though. Robert can tell you I'm really trying. But anyway, sometimes God takes us back to the basis. You're ignoring the root cause of this issue. And if we get in the Word and alone with Him more, He'll give us words for our brothers and sisters. We'll be able to see His Word flow more freely among us. You understand what I'm saying? When we praise and worship, because we've been falling in love with Jesus, falling in love with Jesus, all over again. I love Him. I love Him so much. As I was singing these old songs, I sat by my desk and just cried. Not like full-blown, all-out bawling, but cried because the simplicity of the gospel. I didn't save it for church. I don't know if I should have or not, but I was trying to look for from darkness to light themes, which I touched on Wednesday night. And I don't know if I could find it again, but somebody made this little cartoon, pretty sophisticated. Like, did anybody else see the movie David that Leslie and Robert and I and the kids all went to? That kind of cartoon. The animated characters that are fuller than. And it was a cartoon about a little lamb that was in a volcano ash zone, and he's walking in dark soil, and the little lamb is just sad. And then Jesus shows up and pulls him up out of it. And then he's flying with Jesus, and he's seated in heavenly places instead of in the mully grubs. And I thought, of all the things I was thinking about and listening to, that cartoon is sticking to my bones. You never know what's going to minister to your heart. You never know. But that little lamb, seeing Jesus, and then, you know, because we sing songs like "Love Lifted Me." That's what Jesus does. And if we get too far away from Jesus, we'll go into being like Fountain Street, a social church where nobody feels challenged, everybody's welcome, Muslim, Buddhist, atheist probably, agnostic probably. It becomes more of a social justice, social action, and we just love everybody. Not enough to tell them you're going to go to hell if you don't get born again. You don't love them enough to say that for the most part at your church. From my understanding, there might be those two rogue people that are still stuck to the old-time gospel. Yes, ma'am. Leslie wants to say something. Anybody getting anything out of what I'm saying? Because we can't just keep preaching, but we're not digging in what we can dig into. Time alone with the Lord and falling in love more and more and more.
I think, excuse me, I think the reason why, my opinion, my prayer time, what I've been seeing is people are looking for performance, and people are looking to be loved. You accept me the way that I am. I don't care what the Bible says.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And I watch Church 2819 on Facebook.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
And yep, he is. But what they don't show you all the time, and was when he's up there preaching, is how many people are walking out because of what he's saying.
Oh, it's too challenging?
Yeah, and he was talking about same-sex marriages and stuff like that, and it was quite a few people walked out of this church because they don't want to hear, they don't want to hear the truth.
Yeah.
And like Fountain Street Church or whatever,
Yeah.
I run into people like that all the time. Is your church going to accept me the way that I am? What is it that I need? What are you telling me? Well, I'm married. My name is Linda, and I'm married to Mary. I was like, no, that's not in the Bible.
No.
So, no, we're not accepting to that.
But we accept any visitor. No, I don't want you with your partner like this, head on shoulder. No, that's a slap in the face to people they know don't go along with that. But if you come and visit and hear the word and check things out, everybody is welcome in that case. I don't care if you're an imam over a mosque, but you're curious, genuinely curious about what do Christians do? You're welcome. I'm going to love on you. I'm going to love on you. But you don't flaunt your rebellion in front of people that you know it's offensive to. Ronnie wants to say something. We missed you Wednesday, Ronnie.
I can't think of his name right now. The guy that used to come in on division, he would come in sometimes inebriated.
Yes, Johnny.
Johnny? Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it was.
Johnny was his name.
But we let him come in. He was behaving and everything. He would just come in and sit, even though we know he'd been drinking.
He changed towards last. He got him a brown suit, shaved, came in. I hardly knew the guy. Now, I'm not saying that proves that he changed on the inside, but I'm thinking that meant a lot, because then he wasn't drunk anymore, in church at least. Sometimes people take time. Look at your own life. Look how long you took to get over whatever and stop doing whatever. So yeah, I want to be like, I want to speak the truth, but at the same time let people know you're welcome to sit and listen to the things of the Lord. You're welcome to do that. You're not welcome to flaunt. You're not going to come in here and smoke a joint. It's probably, or have 3 hard drinks in a row. You're not welcome to that in the church. I don't think I've ever had a drink in a church we didn't live in, for sure, and maybe, period. There's something about the sanctuary of God that, even though, like with the priests, they said, don't drink any strong drink when it's your turn to be in the temple. You know, it wasn't like, don't ever have it. It was, don't come in to the house of God having, you know. And you might be able to say the same thing about a big turkey dinner with 2 pieces of apple pie. You know, watch out how you, because you can get dull with that as well. This is not how I was going to preach, but you know what? I don't know what all you got of what just happened, but I got encouraged because I think I got some answers as to exactly what's happening. And we have people that are, most of the reasons they will tell me they're not going to be there, there's stuff they have to do and there's absolutely no time to do it in. And I will add that maybe I need to teach on Sabbath a little harder. I told you before I wasn't going to be a Sabbath cop, and I'm not going to, because I'm not totally convicted about whether or not I should go to a restaurant where somebody else, an Adventist, would look at me and say, what are you doing? You're making somebody else eat. Well, I can tell 2 sides to that thing. So I'm saying I'm not going to be a Sabbath cop, but there are extremes. Like if I said to you, the wash has really built up in the house, and I'm just not going to go anywhere until I get all these loads of wash done, including Sabbath service, I don't know. For me, I'm not trying to tell you, but for me, I don't think that's real pleasing to God. Your wash can wait. In fact, Monday, go to a laundromat where they got several washers, and then that can simultaneously take care of. And you need quarters, I got a lot of them, ask me. You know what I'm saying? But I think people have lost track sometimes of what day it is, and some general guidelines that none of us are breathing down their neck, but at the same time you go, am I the only one that thinks this is important? You know, you can feel that way sometimes. Anyway, thank you for being patient to hear, and don't think we don't notice the attendance. You know, don't think we don't see that clearly. But we've been seeking God. We haven't come up with many answers, but I think I came up with one big one just now. Something so simple, it's hiding in plain sight. We need to get more dedicated. When I was living with my sister Shelley, every night, without anybody saying, time for us to get our devotions, every night, put the kids to bed, we're in the living room. She's having devotions, I'm having to. Neither one of them are doing together, but afterwards we find out we were reading the same passage. God was telling us some of the same thing. We'd rejoice in the Lord together, and it would be glorious. And it's like that when although there were kids involved, I had one, she had 2. But I'm just saying, and I was working full-time at social services, but our heart was so on fire. So praying for revival is important too. For me, for you, for all of us. Amen?